All right, you guys, let's talk about thermometers. Here we are in chapter 6, and it is time to talk about how you're going to measure the heat and a little bit about curing times. So this is the thermometer that I use. It is a meat thermometer because it has a little needle that sticks out. You know, you put it in the meat, make sure it's the right temp. But I find that it works great for candle making. I rarely ever use this in the kitchen. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to sacrifice this for my candle making, and I will just get a new thermometer for cooking steak. So I have been using this, been working wonderfully, but there's so many thermometer options. You can get the kind of like candy making or oil thermometers that clip on. They've got like a metal clip that clips on. You can clip it to the side of your pot here, and it kind of just dips down in there. That way you don't have to take it in and out. Like I have to always come over here and kind of do like this, put the thermometer in there and test the wax. And so I'm always, you know, testing. But if you want to get the little thermometer that sort of clips on the side, you just leave it in there and you can see when the temperature is rising and when it's lowering. Another option are those infrared no-touch thermometers. So it has like a little trigger, you point it to the wax, and it's going to tell you how hot it is. Those are great because it's less mess. You're not going to have to clean the tip, like I'm constantly cleaning the tip off this. So you're not going to have to clean the tip off of those. It's a little bit less messy. So another good option. So let's talk about temperatures for making your candles, because it is so important to get the temperatures right. You're going to want to heat it to a certain degree and then cool it back down to a certain degree before you pour it. So you're going to want to heat the wax up to between 175 and 185 degrees. You don't want to go over 185 degrees or the scent might not bind to the wax. It may like burn off and like evaporate, or it may burn and kind of give a weird odor. So you want to keep it between 175 and 185. When you reach that temp, like between 175 and 185, go ahead and remove your wax from the heat, add your scent, and you're going to want to mix it, stir for about 30 stirs. Generally what I do is just count for 30 seconds, and then I know it's good and mixed. Then you're going to want to leave it to cool until it reaches about 120 to 140 degrees, and then you pour it into your container. If you pour the wax when it's too hot, it may not harden correctly. You might get like a big hole, a big crater. I know when I first started doing this, of course, I mentioned to you guys earlier that I was not paying attention to my temperatures. And as soon as I'd add that scent, I'd pour it. And then I was getting these like huge craters around the center of the wick. Like it'd be, you know, the wax would dip, and then come back up where the wick is and then go way back down. And it was kind of sinking down into the middle. That's because the temperature was too hot and it couldn't harden in a solid state. You see how this is nice and flat? I was getting these huge craters in the center, and my wick was just like sinking all the way down. So you want to make sure you let that cool before you pour it. So let's talk about amounts. I wrote this down in the box. I took notes to make sure that I was melting enough wax and adding enough scent for the container sizes that I had. And it took, like I said, a little bit of trial and error because I wasn't sure. But once I got the amount right, I wrote it down so I would know. So for these two containers, these are both citronella candles, and it took 4.5 cups of this soy wax to make these two containers. Now, depending on what you make, what container you use is going to change that. So I've got two 8-ounce containers here, and I was able to use 4.5 cups of wax to create these two candles. So as you're going through the process and you're creating these things, just make sure you're keeping track of how much you're using per container, so that you can kind of get a good idea of how much wax you need for certain containers. And I'm going to go through all this as we get into the project, so you know exactly how much to use and that sort of thing. It's going to give you a better idea. I just wanted to let you know to take that note. So as you're mixing, as you're taking like scoops of things, like I've got my cup container here, my cup scooper, it helps me keep track of what goes with what and how much of this and which container and how much scent and all those things. It's super, super handy to kind of keep track of all that info. And once you pour your candles, you're going to want to let them cure. So a homemade scented candle really needs to cure for about a minimum of 3 days for a good scent throw. And a scent throw is just like how much scent the candle puts off. But a good cure time of 1 to 2 weeks is even better for an incredibly strong scented candle. And I know that sounds like so much time to wait, but if you're really going to be getting into this, you guys, if you make a few candles a week, then you're going to have a good rotation of candles to burn off. So just keep that in mind. You're going to want to let it cure for at least 3 days, or maybe even a week or two, to give a nice scent throw. All right, now that is it for chapter 6. So we are going to move on to chapter 7, which is safety. Of course, we are working with hot wax and heat and all these things. We need to talk about safety. So hop on over to chapter 7 with me and let's go over the safety stuff.